because this phenomena is an amazing phenomenon. See, because we have both the phenomena called electricity and the phenomena called magnetism. They are getting, both of them are getting linked together, not by any physical contact, not by he's not touching him and come on, but without which they are forming a friendship just by induction, just by coming close to each other. So that is an amazing, something that you cannot see, but the effect of something is so much that even the generators that you see, even the electricity producing generators, the transformers, and everything that is a visible light, everything is electromagnetic. And because of induction, we have these generators, we have these transformers, and all electrical equipments, most of them are based on that. If there was no transformer, we wouldn't have such long transmission of energy. If there were no generators, electrical energy wouldn't have been generated at all. If there were no motors, none of the electrical none of the industries would have worked. Most of the industries have induction motors. Almost 75 to 80% of all the motors, our electric motors, are all the induction motors. And then we are coming up with electric vehicle. When you pass out from as electrical engineers, maybe electric vehicles will be the thing in the world, and you are don't tell anyone, but you will be actually kicking out mechanical engineers. Their IC engines were yes, there will be some IC engines, like hybrid kind of vehicles, but mostly they will be electric vehicles. In electric vehicles, you have electric motors, and the Dubai and not Dubai, the Saudi Arabian countries, or the Arabian countries, all of them who exploited their wealth of oil, petroleum, diesel, all those petroleum products. The demand for petroleum products may come down, and when it becomes electric vehicles, the main advantage is that the abundant solar energy that we have, the abundant solar energy, solar irradiation that is happening on Earth for free, that will be utilized, harnessing that, and we'll be using that to produce electricity, and then we'll be giving to the electric motors as well. So anyway, everywhere there is some sort of electromagnetic induction, electromagnetic phenomena, electric phenomena, etc. Mostly in generators and transformers. Now, what is electromagnetic induction? Now, I don't know in your case, but when in the morning, after I wake up, the very first thing that I do is I do all my regular brushing and all those things, and then I pray, and then I go to the kitchen, and then I'll make coffee or tea, as the case may be, for which I'll have to boil water. Every single day I boil my water. When I see the lid going up and down, I always remember about George Stephenson, the man who brought in steam engines. If not for steam engines, mankind would not have gone forward with industrial revolution. If not for industrial revolution, we wouldn't be the cultured human beings who have so many things of comforts as it is in the world now. Similarly, when Oersted came up with, I said, very underestimated and an unsung hero of electrical engineering, Oersted. When Oersted came up with the fact that electric current produces magnetism, which is what we saw in series magnetic circuit and a parallel magnetic circuit. You had a coil through which you passed current. So when you passed electric current through a coil, and you provided a core or a path for the flux, a flux was produced. So Oersted found out that electric current produces magnetism. In which case, because of inquisitive scientists like Michael Faraday, he thought, if this is the case, just like what I said about George Stephenson, steam engine power, just because he saw a kettle where the lid was going up and down. Similarly, very inquisitive, very investigative, very research oriented persons like Michael Faraday thought, if electric current can produce magnetism, why not the reverse? Why not a magnetic field produce electricity? From which he did certain experiments or whatever, and from which came the important phenomena called electromagnetic induction. He found that, and he also demonstrated that when a magnetic flux linked with a coil varies with a let me write this down. When a magnetic flux or magnetic field linked with a coil or a conductor, linked with a conductor, varies, an EMF is induced in it. So I'm stopping this, induced in it. So this is called electromagnetic induction. Of course, I know that you all have learned about electromagnetic induction in your +1, +2 classes. But as that is why I will try to make it a little bit different from what you have learned. I'll just try to, after all, what you have learned in +1, +2 classes and what I'll be discussing today are the same. But let me try to do that. It's just an attempt by me. Like, you know that when you pass a current through a conductor, it becomes magnetic in nature. Or Oersted, scientists called Oersted, in 1819 saw that a steady current passing through a conductor can make it or can produce a steady magnetism. That we all know. When you pass a current through a conductor, the conductor becomes magnetic in nature. So Faraday, years later, Faraday thought, if a steady current can produce a steady magnetic field, is it possible to produce a steady current from magnetic field? Or is it possible to produce is it possible for a steady magnetic field to produce a steady current is that possible? Faraday was thinking, is the reverse possible? So what did he do? He made this experiment, everything you know what it is. He made a circuit, or there was a solenoid connected to a battery through a switch. Okay. This is a solenoid, and he passed current through it by closing the switch. He passed current. So the current will have this direction, as you know, because the battery is connected like this. And then what he did was he made another loop like this near to it, and then he connected it to a galvanometer or an ammeter, as the case may be. Okay. So he knew that when he passes a current I through this solenoid, a current electric field is produced, okay, but a magnetic field is also produced. And this magnetic field is getting linked with the loop number 2. This is loop number 2 and this is loop number 1. Okay. So Faraday was checking whether the steady current or the DC current passing through loop 1 is possible. Is it possible for that steady current to produce a magnetic field, that is a steady magnetic field, which will get coupled, which will get linked with loop number 2 and produce a steady current? He did a number of experiments and he miserably failed. As you can later know why. he failed in that experiment and he concluded that no, it is not possible to produce electricity or steady current from steady magnetic field, or he concluded that the reverse is not possible. Though Oersted said that he could do this, Faraday said the reverse is not possible. Okay? Then one day, as you all know, in most of the cases, the events that have a profound effect on mankind's history are produced by accidents, just by coincidences. That is why we say that even the smallest thing that happens in your life may have an impact in your life. That smallest thing may be the one that is going to help you in your life throughout. Similarly, Faraday just happened to notice that whenever he closed the switch, at the moment when the switch was closed and at the moment when the switch was open, the galvanometer here showed a deflection, which means that he said he that made him think, why is this happening? Okay, the steady current through the solenoid which produces a steady magnetic field here, or a magnetic field here doesn't produce a current here, but whenever he closes or opens the switch here, what happens? The galvanometer shows a slight deflection. So that made him think, what is happening? As I told you, that was a very simple coincidence which led to a very important discovery. And then he concluded that a changing magnetic field induces an EMF, or induces a voltage, or induces a current in loop 2. A change in magnetic field in loop 1. Why do I say it's a change in magnetic field? When the switch is closed, current is getting increased. When the switch is open, the current is decreasing. Or in fact, what is happening here is that the magnetic field produced by that current is varying. When you close the switch, it is going on increasing. When you open the switch, the already existing magnetic field is changing. Or a changing magnetic field is producing or is inducing an EMF or current in the loop 2. This phenomenon, that which I said had a very profound impact, a profound discovery, is called as electromagnetic induction. Why is it called electromagnetic induction? Electricity is being produced by a magnetic field through induction, not by conduction, not by actual, they are not in physical contact. So let's see how this can be explained. Now the question is how this happens. So what Faraday did was, Faraday took a loop like this. Let me draw a loop like this, okay? And maybe, okay. And then a bar magnet, which is having poles like this, say North Pole and South Pole, which means the magnetic field will be like this. Will be getting linked like this. So when this bar magnet was moved towards this loop, what happened is that the loop will produce a current in this direction. Why? Current, it's when the bar magnet was moved in the direction of when the bar magnet was moved in the direction towards the coil, he saw that the direction of current induced current is in one direction. And when the bar magnet was moved away from the loop, again he saw there is a current in the loop, but this time it is in the reverse direction. Whereas when the bar magnet was kept very close to the loop but not moving at all, no induced EMF was produced, which means that only if the bar magnet was in motion, so long as the motion persists, there was an induced EMF and hence an induced current in the coil too, or in the coil, which was by being induced. But why? So which means that when the bar magnet, always remember, this is a very important point which you may all know, but I want to remind you. When the bar magnet is kept very close, even if the bar magnet is kept very close to the coil, when it is kept very close to coil, it means all the flux lines, most of the flux lines are getting linked with the coil. But because it is not in motion, even though all the flux lines are getting linked with the coil, the flux lines are not changing. There is no change in the flux line, so no EMF is induced. Whereas when the coil, when the bar magnet is moved away from when there is a motion, when there is a movement of the bar magnet, what happens is that at first there was a lot of flux linkage. When it is moved away, and away, the more away the bar magnet is, the magnetic flux is getting reduced and reduced, which means there is a change in flux density and a induced current flows through the coil. Similarly, when the reverse happens, when the bar magnet is brought more and more towards the coil, when the bar magnet is being moved, what happens is when the magnetic flux lines are getting more and more flux lines are getting linked, which means there again there is a change in magnetic flux, which means an induced EMF is produced. So now the question was, why does what determines the direction in which the loop current flows, the direction in which the current flows in this case? I said when this bar magnet is coming down, when it is moved down, the loop currents will be like this, because then, so this is how all these things come up. Okay, so this is what Faraday saw. So then Faraday now comes up with the first law, Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction. What is Faraday's first law? Faraday's first law states that whenever, I am going to write it completely, because even in SH, do you remember, you should trust me when I say this, even in SH, people tend to go wrong in the statement of Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction. First law, whenever there is a change in magnetic field linked with a conductor or coil, coil means a number of turns of the conductor, an EMF is induced in it. An EMF is induced in it means in the conductor. So always, I want all of you to tell this to yourself now. Whenever there is a change in magnetic flux linked with a conductor or a coil, an EMF is induced in it. I'm going to call out someone, because this is a very painful affair when this happens in S8. Okay, Archa AS, is Archa AS here? Archa?
Yes, ma'am.
Archa, repeat after me. Okay, whenever there is a change, whenever there is a change, I forgot to write. Whenever there is a change in magnetic field, whenever there is a change in magnetic field, linked with a conductor, an EMF is induced in it. Okay, Sri Lakshmi.
Yes.
Yeah, repeat after me. Whenever there is a change in magnetic field,
Whenever there is a change in magnetic
linked with a conductor, an EMF is induced in it.
and EMF is induced.
Subair, Muhammad Hamdan Subair. Is Subair present? Okay, number 26, Gonath Chand.
Yes, ma'am.
Whenever there is a change in magnetic field,
Whenever there is a change in magnetic field linked with the conductor, an EMF is induced in it.
You will feel that you're foolish, Shweta. You will all feel that I am really foolish to tell you this. But all over my, like, I have almost more than 20 years of my service, teaching service, okay? In SIT, when you come for a viva and I ask this Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction, എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു ഒരു 80 to 90% of students go wrong. Okay, because they have come up with so many other ideas and they always say that when a current carrying conductor is kept, that is wrong. Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction, always remember whenever, okay, whenever there is a change in magnetic field linked with the conductor, an EMF is induced in it. So when Faraday did these experiments, he came up with his first law. Then second thing that he saw was that when the bar magnet was moved, he tried to move it fast, he tried to move it slowly. And he saw that whenever he moved it faster, when the bar magnet was moved faster, he saw that the magnitude of current is higher, or the ammeter or the galvanometer showed a greater deflection. And when he moved the bar magnet slowly, so he saw that then the current, the magnitude of the current or magnitude of EMF was lesser, or the ammeter or the galvanometer connected to the loop showed a smaller deflection, which means that now he know that this is dependent on speed, or dt. The time of variation also now comes into play. Okay. And then he saw another thing. Then next experiment was that he increased the number of turns in the coil. There again, he saw that as the number of coils were increased, again the ammeter showed more deflection, which means it was dependent on N also. Now he came up with his second law, which gives you the magnitude of the induced EMF. He said that the magnitude of the induced EMF is proportional to the change in flux linkage, because the rate of change was also brought in. It is proportional to the rate of change of flux linkages. That is very important. He saw that it is dependent on dt, it is dependent on N, and it is dependent on flux also. So he came up with E is proportional to N phi 2 minus N phi 1 by T, or this is equal to K into N phi 2 minus N phi 1 by T. T is now coming into play because now he saw that faster or slower change in the magnetic flux also makes a difference. Or in the differential form, which is what we usually put, E is equal to minus N d phi by dt, or minus d psi by dt. Now let me explain that once again. Here, this is what he concluded from his experiments. That is, now he saw the first law was that whenever there is a flux linkage change with the linked with the conductor, EMF is induced. Okay. Now, what is the magnitude of the induced EMF? He came up with the second law, that the magnitude of the induced EMF is directly proportional to the rate of change of flux linkages. It's not rate of change of flux, it is rate of change of flux linkages. And he concluded that E is proportional to N phi 2, the second flux linkage, minus what was the earlier flux linkage, N phi 1 by T. So what is this N? The number of turns in the coil. And then there is this is also only a proportionality. So if he brought in a proportionality constant K, this K is equal to 1 as per the units that we are using. And in the differential form, E, the induced EMF E is equal to minus N d phi by dt, which is equal to minus d psi by dt, where psi is called as the flux linkage. Flux linkage means phi is the flux, N is the N phi. When it is N phi, it becomes flux linkage. Now we have another question coming up. What does this negative sign signify? What is being represented by this negative sign? Okay, we saw that when the bar magnet was brought downwards, current flowed in one direction, and when the bar magnet was moved upwards, the current induced in the loop followed another direction. So now though Faraday came up with the actual phenomenon of electromagnetic induction by first law, he came up with the magnitude of induced EMF with his second law. Now the question is, if at all an EMF is induced, what will be the direction in which the current flows? That was what was given by Lenz's law. Now, Lenz's law is not a quantitative law because it doesn't give you any magnitude or anything, it just gives you the direction. And it may perhaps be the most human kind of law. Human kind of all the laws, because it is speaking about something like us. We all have an inertia, okay? We all have an inertia towards change. We are all in a comfort zone. We don't want to change. So that is an inertia. Just like that, even in electromagnetic induction phenomenon, you have something called as an inertia. Why? Because when this is brought downwards, let me clear this up and draw once again. Okay, when the okay, I have a loop here. Okay, this is a bar magnet, North Pole, South Pole. If the bar magnet is brought downwards, which means that the magnetic field linked is like this, or you are going to go on increasing the magnetic field, or you are bringing down the North Pole. If a North Pole is brought down, always the current through the coil will flow in such a direction as to oppose the very cross producing it. What is the very cause which is producing this which is going to induce the current here? The movement of the bar magnet, or the bar magnet North Pole is coming towards it. So every time the magnetic field produced by the loop current will be in such a way as to produce a North Pole here, or to produce a flux like this, which means I want to produce a North Pole on the top and a South Pole on the bottom, which means I want to prevent the North Pole from approaching the loop, so that the current now, if I want the magnetic field towards upwards, so how should be the current flow? By right hand corkscrew rule. Right hand corkscrew rule. You have to have the current. Can you see my hand? Someone should have. Varsha, can you see my hand?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you want this magnetic flux to go upwards, the current should flow like this, isn't it? The corkscrew should be tightened like this. Okay, so the current has to flow in this direction. And suppose the induced current is produced because if I suppose I am moving this bar magnet away from the coil, which means I want to get attracted, or the induced EMF will be in such a way that as to produce a induced current in such a way that this motion is prevented. How to do so? Then in that case, the magnetic field should be produced downwards and the current will reverse. Or Lenz's law just says that it doesn't give you any magnitude. It's not a quantitative law. Lenz's law just says that the induced current, remember, it says induced current, not EMF. You can only then say about the direction. The induced current will flow in such a direction as to oppose the very cause producing it. Lenz's law states that the induced current due to the induced EMF, okay, the induced current will flow in such a direction as to oppose the very cause producing it. If the bar magnet is moving downwards, it will flow in such a direction as to oppose the downward motion of the bar magnet. If the bar magnet is moved upwards, thereby changing the magnetic flux, then the induced current due to the induced EMF will flow in a direction as to oppose the movement of the bar magnet away. That is, each time it doesn't want to want any change in the magnetic flux. I hope that is clear. So today what we discussed was regarding Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction and Lenz's law. Hope this much is clear. I know you have not gathered anything much more than what you have already learned in your +1, +2 classes. But you have to remember that these things, I did not complicate it. Actually, these things, this, whatever I'm going to say now, you may listen and then just think about it later on. These things were brought in from electromagnetic theory. Okay, in which case you were considering an area perpendicular to the, you have a surface. If suppose this is the coil, you consider an area inside the coil, then you consider, a normal dA, then you consider a field dB, etc., 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 and then finally Faraday has come up with minus n d phi by dt. It is not very simply, he did not come to this equation simply from his experiment. From the experiments, he worked out some Maxwell's equations, dot product of these things, and then finally reach this equation. So today, so that is all for today. So today what we discussed today was, one was about what is electromagnetic induction, what is the phenomenon of electromagnetic induction. When the magnetic field or the magnetic flux linked with the conductor varies or changes, and EMF is induced in the conductor, and this phenomenon is called electromagnetic induction. Most of the electrical devices, generators, transformers, everything works on the principle of electromagnetic induction. If not for this, you wouldn't have rotating machinery. In a rotating machinery, you have an outer cover, you have a rotor rotating inside, there is an air gap in between. See, the rotor is not touching the stator or touching the inside thing. There is an air gap. So how does a magnetic field, so the magnetic field linked with the outer portion is getting linked with the inner portion. So in some manner, the generation is produced, that is through the air gap. Anyway, that you will come into in the later stage. So that is why you say the electromagnetic induction is like, man or human beings or living beings live because they have the breathing, respiration, just like respiration for us. For any electrical engineering and any electrical engineer and for any electrical equipment, the respiration of a man or of a living being is equivalent to the phenomenon of electromagnetic induction. So that is what we learned today. And we learned three laws. One was Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction. One was the very statement. And the second was the magnitude, E is equal to minus n d phi by dt. The statement was, it starts with whenever there is a change in magnetic field linked with a conductor or coil, and EMF is induced in it. And what is the direction of induced current? That is given by Lenz's law. The time allotted for each period is very, very small, and so very less. So I am going to stop over with this. That's all for today.